Welcome to K-Drama School. I'm your host, Grace Jung, and class is now in session. This is the second leg of my trip. I did not realize that I will be going to DC tomorrow, but I am going to DC tomorrow. Apparently, I am part of the DC Comedy Festival, and I wasn't even notified and told that I was scheduled in their lineup. So I will be in DC on September 13th at the DuPont Underground at 7 p.m. for the opening night showcase of the DC Comedy Festival. So if you're in town, please be sure to come out and support. It would be lovely to see your faces. I'll make two more show announcements. On Saturday, September 18th at 8 p.m., I'm going to be in Garden Grove, California at the Nuang Zone. Saturday, September 25th at 6 p.m., I'm going to be part of the Kids in the Yard show. It's in North Hollywood, California. Look up Kids in the Yard on Instagram and they will make sure that the address is available. So that show is going to be a banger. Please be sure to come and join us if you're in LA. I'm having a very interesting week. I've been obsessed with the US Open. I've been watching the quarterfinals and the semifinals. I just finished watching the finals today. I'm recording this on Saturday. And it was pretty amazing watching these teenagers. I was watching Leylah Fernandez, who just turned 19 on Monday, play against Emma Raducanu, who is 18 years old, representing for Great Britain, and it was pretty amazing. Like, I have never cried this much while watching tennis. I've been watching tennis all my life since I was a kid. I played tennis since elementary school. I played all the way through high school, and I am a big fan of the US Open every year. Back when I was living in New York, I went to the US Open every single year. And this year, I really wanted to go to the US Open, so I got quarterfinal tickets, and I went to see US Open on Thursday or something last week, and it was a lot of fun. And what was so moving about the finals today is that both Raducanu and Fernandez are like nobodies. Like, nobody knew who they were. They're not top players. They're not world ranked. They literally, Raducanu was like, she entered the US Open as a qualifier, which means she's really at the bottom of the ladder, but she just fought her way up all the way to the finals and played against Leylah Fernandez, who has been beating all of these top players from around the world. It's been kind of mesmerizing. And what was so moving about these games is that I was just so compelled by these women's conviction, their sense of self-confidence and self-worth and their belief in themselves. Like, that really, really moved me, because when I was 18, 19 years old, I didn't have that. I really, really did not have that. And I was just so inspired by these young women and their ability to just fight through all these obstacles and become like world-renowned champions, at the US Open Grand Slam. It was like kind of amazing. So that's been, emotionally moving for me. The other reason why I've been, emotional is because I'm still kind of mourning Fu. I mean, he was a friend, and he was a fellow comic of the LA comedy community. And, I didn't really shed tears so much, but yesterday during therapy, I actually did cry a bit. Turns out I was holding back some tears, and, I kind of let it go. So, this trip has been kind of emotionally taxing for me. I don't think it's all negative. I think there is some sense of growth and some, I don't know, some expanding of my understanding of where I am in terms of my growth and all that. But yeah, it hasn't been easy. The shows in North Carolina, here in Greensboro, have been very fun. The audience here is really amazing. So I've been having a really great time on stage. So I'm very grateful to Greensboro, North Carolina for that. And I hope that I have just as much fun in DC when I go to DC tomorrow. The show that I'll be discussing today is called Record of Youth. It is a Netflix original Korean drama, but it was distributed by TVN. And it is a pretty, how do I say, it's a quiet drama. It's not very high stakes. It's not extreme by any means, but I have a special kind of appreciation for this particular show because of the queer text that it contains. So this show was written by Ha Myung-hee, who I believe is a relatively new Korean drama writer, and it was directed by An Kil-ho. It stars fan favorite Park Bo-gum as the male lead and Park So-dam as the female lead. Everybody knows who Park So-dam is because she was the daughter in that movie Parasite, which won the Oscars a couple of years ago. And this show is an interesting examination on modern careerists and modern love. So you have Park So-dam who plays this makeup artist who used to be an office worker. Her name is An Jung-ha, and she quit her day job in the office in order to pursue her dreams as a makeup artist. And she happens to be a big fan of Sahejun, who is a model slash actor, and that is, of course, played by Park Bo-gum. I thought it was a really interesting insight on the kind of gusto and guts that it takes for a person to quit the secure day job that they have in order to pursue their dreams. Like, this is something that a lot of people struggle with in our capitalist society, but it's something that Koreans definitely struggle with a lot because even though South Korea is a booming economy today, they weren't necessarily the most stable economy even up until like 30, 40 years ago. So in that regard, this show is very special because it kind of really examines the guts and the bravery that it takes for artists to pursue an independent freelance career as a makeup artist or as a model slash actor. It also takes a close look at the economic inequality and how that impacts young people who are pursuing the arts. So in Sahejun's case, he comes from a working class background, and interestingly enough, his paternal grandfather, was also in the arts. His paternal grandfather used to be a singer, and because he used to be a singer and led this unstable life trying to pursue his dreams, he really did kind of screw over his son and his family. Because, the thing that most people don't understand is that in order to be an artist, you end up spending a lot of money, okay? Like, even for me right now, like coming to these comedy festivals, like a lot of this stuff is out of my own pocket. The comedy festivals don't pay for our hotel and flight. Comedy festivals don't pay for our meals. All right. All of this stuff is on our dime. And the reason why we do it is because we want to be seen at these clubs in these local cities, and we want to be seen by bookers. We want to be seen by audiences that are diverse and that are not just in our local regions. And, pursuing anything that is related to the arts is a huge risk, and it costs you very much financially. So if you have a family, right, then you're really putting a lot on the line. And so in that regard, you have Sahejun's grandfather, who is very much hated by Sahejun's father, right? So So this former singer's son is very resentful of his dad and for having pursued his dreams. And because he has this bad experience with his own father when it comes to his own son, Sae-jun, he is very, very cynical and critical, right? Doesn't believe in him, keeps telling him to quit while he can and just go and serve in the military and get over it. That's the other thing that's kind of a theme here. These young men, Sae-jun and Sae-jun's best friend, Won-hye-yo, they both have the military conscription duty that is sort of pressing down on their shoulders because they have to serve before they turn 30, and this is required by law. So they're kind of being chased by time. And this is a major factor in a lot of young men's careers. You know, you've seen K-pop stars who've had huge careers and successes, and then, you know, when they have to go serve in the military, then they'll take 2 years off and then they're gone for a couple years, right? And then when they come back, sometimes they come back big, other times they come back and people forget them. So that is a bit of a risk, and that is something that burdens a lot of these young men. So it was interesting to get insight in on that. What I also really appreciated was the mothers on this show. The mothers have so much love for their sons, both for Hae-yo and Hee-jun, right? I mean, the mothers are, of course, of very different economic backgrounds. Hee-jun's mother is working for Hae-yo's mother as a house cleaner, and their conversations tend to be very interesting, right? They have a little bit of beef, but they also have some respect for each other. And, you know, as I say, it does cost a person a lot for them to go and pursue their careers. It costs money to hire a hairstylist and a makeup artist. It costs money to get your photographs taken. It costs money to sit around and wait while you wait for the next audition or your next big break. So it's a very costly process, but in Hae-yo's case, he has the financial security and the backing of his mother, who is also very wealthy and knows a lot of people and offers bribes to reporters to write about her son and give him greater publicity and all of that jazz, right? So you can see that the game is somewhat rigged. And the way that Hee-jun makes it is he sort of beats all those odds and then he comes out big in the end. And turns out Hae-yo, his mother, has been buying his social media followers, right? And this feels like a tremendous betrayal and a humiliation and embarrassment for Hae-yo. When you watch these variety shows where they talk about K-pop stars, right? Like a lot of these young kids who get into the K-pop world and into the acting world, they're putting a lot on the line. They are not going to go to school, okay? So they're choosing not to pursue a career that requires studies and education degrees and then office work. No, they're putting everything on the line, especially when they're coming from poorer backgrounds, in order to make it, right? Beat all the odds. And there are so many people who are trying to compete and make it in these entertainment industries. So, I mean, it really takes a lot. It really takes a lot of self-belief. It takes a lot of risk. And, you know, in Hee-jun's case, he was also offered sponsorships, right? So this is where the queer text comes in. You have this fashion designer named Charlie Jung who has a huge crush on Hee-jun, and he tells him, look, you need a financial sponsor. I am willing to sponsor you, but in exchange for physical intimacy. And Hee-jun is just like, no, like, you know, I respect you as a designer, but my body's my own and I don't want to go down that path, right? So you have this other social currency exchange that is on the table. Like sometimes it requires people to go and sell their bodies, especially if they're financially underprivileged, right? And this is something that impacts them, not so much people who are financially well off. So there are these other factors that sort of come into play. And you have to wonder if a show like Record of Youth is discussing these kinds of scenarios, how much more of that is actually true in the K-pop industry, in the modeling industry, in the acting industry, right? and how much of that affects not only men, but a lot of young girls and women. And of course, there were huge reports about, like suicides, high suicide rate among young K-pop star women and young actresses in South Korea. So, we do have to wonder, like, are these young women protected from these kinds of predators, right? Are these young men also protected from these kinds of predators? It's something to wonder. So those are some of the elements that I found intriguing about this show. What I would say about this show is that it didn't really have very high stakes for me personally. I thought it was still relatively, about heteronormativity, right? I thought it was interesting to give Hijun's grandfather a storyline, giving this elderly man who worked in entertainment a second chance so that he can go and pursue modeling as a senior citizen. I thought that was kind of lovely to see. But ultimately, this was a very kind of low stakes drama for me, and that's why I called it a quiet show. But I do think it has some important qualities for people to discuss, especially as a queer text. And ultimately, I thought the performances were really great. I thought Park Bo-gum's performance was quite different from his other performances. Like in this one, he's got a little bit more of a bite. And I kind of appreciated Park Bo-gum for that. He's not like this quiet, wimpy sort of pushover like he typically is in some of his other roles. So I like that quite a bit. Today I'm going to be talking to Duckie L'Orange. She is a clown and she's also a puppeteer. She is also a comedian. I love Duckie. I met her in Berlin, I guess 3 years ago now. And she was hosting at this bar one night with a showcase, and I was just bombing on stage. Like, I was eating shit all night, but, I don't know. I was just glad to have her presence there. She was playing Richard P. Van Dyck, Dick Johnson or something like that. Anyway, she was playing this drag king character, and I thought she was hilarious. And she has such a great spirit. Like, she's one of these people that is similar to other people that I've interviewed, like Van Jasmine. She reminds me of Lizzie Cooperman a little bit. Like, she's one of these raw artists, raw talent artists who she seems to have like no sense of being held back by fear and self-doubt, and I really love and respect her for that reason. I really enjoyed the conversation that we had when we were talking about the Uncanny Valley. If you guys are not familiar with the Uncanny Valley, it's based on what Freud discusses. Freud wrote this essay about the uncanny. The uncanny is a difficult sort of concept. I mean, if I remember correctly, it has something to do with what is familiar, and you've been looking at it all, like you're very familiar with it, you've been looking at it a lot, but then there's something about that thing that is slightly off, and that offness is what creates this strange feeling, this feeling of alienation, this feeling of fear, this feeling like that thing is the other. And the Uncanny Valley is applied in the arts very often. And for those of you who study like AI technology, if you study androids and things of that nature, the Uncanny Valley is very much a component of that. I really enjoyed this conversation with Duckie. I think you're going to love her. So let's talk to Duckie L'Orange.
Yeah, I've been noticing you've been traveling a lot, doing lots of shows. You had a residency in Poland recently?
Yes, I did. It
Yeah.
was a wonderful experience.
Tell me about it. Tell me.
Yeah, well, I applied for a lot of residencies throughout the lockdown because it gave me some sort of hope for the future.
Sure.
And I would recommend this. Australia is back into lockdown now.
Okay.
It's a nice meditative stay-at-home thing to do, write
Hmm.
applications, and it
Mm-hmm.
does help you sharpen up your analytic and your writing skills as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So I was accepted into a wonderful, wonderful residency in Poland
Mm-hmm.
called the Palace Residency, and the name didn't disappoint. It was in a 17th century Polish palace,
Wow.
which was in various stages of disrepair. So, from complete ruins through to semi ruins, through to completely restored, beautiful, sweeping, stucco clad rooftops with scene
Yeah.
paintings of incredible detail down the walls, and really lavish interiors decked out with antique furniture.
Mm-hmm.
It was really a magical place with grounds as well, full of gardens and a pond and a
Mm.
chapel down in the garden. And it was set up in such a way that 250 people were able to stay there,
Wow.
and they had selected artists from different disciplines. So it was a little anarchic in a way. You didn't have to come with a set plan, although you could.
Mm.
And then they had set it up so that it was just a great space to facilitate being creative. So there was a theatre space, a movement space, a recording studio, a live music space, a room full of sewing machines,
Mm-hmm.
a room full of other equipment and craft materials, a cinema,
Wow.
uh, a costume department. So
Wow.
the it was really a fertile
Mm-hmm.
environment, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And just by way of a small example, I met a girl at 3 o'clock in the morning. We started talking. She said she was a photographer that shoots on film, but she didn't have an idea of what to do. I arranged to meet her the next day. We went together to the costume department. We chose an outfit and she styled me. Then we wandered around the castle and found picturesque spots, and she photographed me, and I just got the photos this week actually because she had them developed.
Yeah.
So
How do you like them?
I love them. They turned
Yeah.
out really beautifully,
Ah.
really, really beautifully. She's very talented. But that kind of thing basically happened every day. You just
Yeah.
meet people and talk to them and have ideas, and then
Yeah.
you have everything you need to
To just go.
implement your ideas straight away. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was very cool.
Oh my God. It's a wonderland. That's like a dream come true for artists. And it sounds like the perfect kind of space for somebody like you, because, you're somebody I consider up there with like a few other, artist friends I know who are kind of like this raw talent, very like, you're very, I don't know, your artistic intuition is very much at the surface at all times, you're always kind of in this mode, creative mode. And it's like there's a pureness to it. Yeah. Very like childlike, very pure. And it's actually quite common among friends of mine who do the kind of work that you do, like clowning, for instance. You also work with puppets a lot. I noticed that when you were at this palace residency, you were wearing this amazing, huge, like monster costume with like a purple tongue. Like, did you make that? I mean, where did that come from?
Yeah, again, it was completely spontaneous. So, an artist who I think the name of that puppetry company is The Strange Fur,
Hmm.
and he's originally from the US, but is now based in Amsterdam. So he came there with the project to make a giant puppet,
Hmm.
his own self-styled project. And
Hmm.
because the palace is so vast,
Yeah.
he had just claimed an entire room to build that puppet in. And I believe he had requested that they order all the foam and maybe the fabrics in advance.
Yeah.
So his project was that he went there every day to this room and built up the puppet from scratch, or he may have
Hmm.
started it before.
Hmm.
But I just walked past and I noticed that he was building a giant puppet.
Yeah.
And this is the specialization of mine. I've done in Australia many, many giant puppet projects before
Yeah.
as a performer, not as a builder.
Uh-huh.
So I, of course, was interested and started speaking with him. And he
Yeah.
said he hadn't made one like that before. And I offered that I could test it and see if I might notice some things that could be optimized, for example,
Hmm.
which I did. And then he invited me, once he'd finished, to perform in it, and he had also made a creature that was on stilts, but
Uh-huh. I saw that one.
like
The
a
white one?
four-legged, yeah, four-legged stilt creature that
Mm-hmm.
he had made at the same residency the year before.
Mm.
So we then performed together, me in the new monster called Lulu,
Mm-hmm.
and him in the old one. And yeah, again, it was just completely spontaneous, but very, very nice experience. And I've already been in touch with him, that hopefully we'll be able to perform with them again at other
Yes.
festivals,
Yeah.
because his work was amazing.
So
And
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, that's just the kind of thing that can happen.
Yes, I loved that monster costume. First of all, I was like, this is perfect for her. Like it's just like so it was so you, like this big shiny purple tongue, and I saw like a lady putting her foot on the tongue. You
Yeah.
know? I was like, yes, this is it. Um, like I don't know. I want to ask two questions. One is I'll start with a puppetry thing first. Like, what is your like take on puppetry? Like, what is your philosophy behind it? Like, what do you think the purpose of puppets are? Like, why do puppet masters use a puppet? You know, like why? What is the point of that? Or for you, what is the purpose of that? Like, what are you able to communicate that you're not able to without a puppet that helps having a puppet? Yeah, I'll start with that one.
Very good question. A lot of puppeteers have different theories about this, but generally it's agreed that you would use a puppet in situations where you can't use a human actor.
Mm,
So, I mean, the human face has a million different expressions, and the body has also 1,000 different expressions through body language. I
mhm,
think it's generally agreed that if you can use a human, you should, because we're the most expressive things that you can see on stage.
mhm,
But a puppet can be useful for lots of different things. So, for example, if you want to make your show cheap and
mm,
there's only you only want to pay one performer,
mhm,
then maybe you could have puppets as the other characters. Or
mm,
if there's some reason that a size difference is important. So, for example, there are some very famous, well known shows with giant elephants, giant horses, giant dinosaurs.
mhm,
And of course, they're so fantastically well made. They look real. They're
mm,
very impressive. Um, you couldn't achieve this with a human. So
mhm,
often, when you have animals, monsters, things like that, they work really well. Also, if you're trying to juxtapose the puppet against a human. For example,
mm,
if there are two characters,
mhm,
that can be interesting. I saw an interpretation of a Black Mirror episode once where it was a story of a woman and a robot, but
mhm,
they had the human playing the robot and the puppet playing the human.
mm,
And it really highlighted how unemotional the woman was, and
hmm,
it was a kind of an interest, like it just tricks your brain a little bit
mhm,
into doing some gymnastics.
mhm,
And we call this in puppetry the uncanny valley.
mm,
So it's like a curve, that's the valley of uncanniness. So you have an unrealistic doll, like a
mhm,
Barbie doll. It's not that scary.
mhm.
Then you have a really realistic doll, and
Those
then it
baby
disturbs you
ones,
a little bit.
the
Yeah,
ones that
because
close their eyes. Mhm,
yeah, it looks like a bit too much like a real
mhm,
person. So
mhm,
people don't feel that comfortable with those.
mhm,
And then the most uncanny part of the uncanny valley is when you have something that's realistic,
mm,
but then it also moves and it
mm,
appears lifelike.
mhm,
And then yeah, it really does make people feel something when they know it's not real,
mm,
but the puppeteer has done a good enough job
mm,
to make them feel like it could be real.
mhm.
It solicits an emotional response that's quite interesting. So that
And
can be
it's
useful.
typically fear or disturbance or a very unfamiliar feeling maybe, and that's why they attribute it to fear or disturbance, because yeah, I mean, the uncanny valley is used in like so many other, kinds. I mean, it's a good theory for many different things. They talk about it in like critical studies in theater too, with like androids, for instance, and how increasingly there are android models like on Instagram with millions of followers, and they're not real. You know, they're like, oh, this is like a Brazilian non-binary pansexual model, and they are, you know, endorsing Fendi and Prada and Gucci bags, and of course the creator is a white cis man, right? Like, um you know, but it's like, okay, like this model has followers, but then maybe it's because this model seems so human, like so lifelike, and there's a whole narrative and a whole story behind them that it's like, okay, like they feel real. Whereas if you go a few steps back, like, you know, let's say if we looked at this model as not in this quote unquote idealized state, but like a few steps behind that, you know, maybe like their eyes are a little more beady, or you know, they are, you know, there's something that's off that you could tell they're not human, and then
Yes.
that suddenly like creates this disturbing feeling, this disturbing effect or unfamiliar effect. Yeah.
And the eyes, it's good that you mentioned because these are very important. I
Mm.
think it's the main focal point for the human hindbrain or whatever.
Oh,
If you put eyes on anything, it's already takes on human-ish characteristics.
yeah.
Like if you put eyes on a cup, I don't
Hmm.
have an example,
Hmm.
but then you might see the handle as an ear all of a sudden, but you didn't see that before you put the eyes on. So
Right.
they're really like the key. But yeah, as you say, if the eyes are unhuman in some way, then that also creates a disturbing, like if they don't blink, for example, that's very
Right.
unnatural. Like most things that you make won't blink because it's a complicated mechanism.
Yeah, it is. It is a complicated mechanism. It's like, you know, we blink for so many reasons, for biological reasons, but also for emotional reasons, for mental reasons. Um, yeah. When you were talking about how puppets are used to, um, it's like used in place for to do things that human actors cannot do. Like, can you give me like one example from your past, like that you remember? Like, what, like, in what way was this puppet? Okay, for instance, I saw you once use like it was like a gynecological clamp,
Hmm.
right? For like you were using it as like a beak. Like, when you were using that object, for instance, that puppet, what were you able to communicate through that that was not necessarily like, you know, that a human person wouldn't have been useful for instance?
Yeah, so for example, in that piece, I do a number of different characters, um, which is easier for me to transfer from character to character when it's with a puppet.
Mm.
I also have the voice of the narrator, which I do, so I find it practical from that perspective, I suppose.
Hmm.
Also, because it's this gynecological speculum, of course, it doesn't look anything like a human, and that's a great example where I just put eyes on it,
Hmm.
and then you see this bit as the nose, and this
Hmm.
bit as the mouth,
Hmm.
and that's it basically. But it works. Nobody has any problems with imagining it to be alive or to be
Mm.
real.
Right.
Um, but it's got a completely different look and feel to a human that's cartoonish,
Hmm.
and the whole piece has a cartoonish noir vibe to it
Mm.
that fits very well. And then, spoiler alert, at the end, um, he gets sucked into a vagina, which you wouldn't be able to achieve very well with a human. Maybe if you built a
Right.
giant vagina and then you got sucked into it, but again, it's not that practical.
Right.
Sometimes things you can communicate your message, especially when it's with scale,
Sure.
much more easily with puppetry.
Oh, scale. Yeah. Scale changes everything, huh? Are you a fan of Charlie Kaufman at all?
People always ask me this. Um,
Yeah.
and I have to admit, like I'm not that familiar with his work, so
Mm.
probably I'm influenced indirectly in some way. And I should, when I have time, go and look through the back catalog.
I think just
But
one
yeah,
film. Yeah. Just
yeah,
being
or
John
just one.
Malkovich. Being John Malkovich.
I
Yeah.
have seen actually Being John
Oh, okay.
Malkovich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only one that's like really puppet themed. But I think Kaufman is obsessed with puppets. I'm reading his novel right now, and it is like he has puppets in there too. I think in his mind, he thinks that being a screenwriter is like being a puppeteer, a puppet master, you know?
Yeah, it
So
kind of is. Kind of is.
he builds, like, even in his novel, he builds a world where there are puppets, you know, and he
Hmm.
counts how many puppets there are, like what the gender of these puppets are, what the ethnicity of these puppets are, what the age of these puppets are, and then like keeps account of them. And it's very weird and interesting, but yeah, I think you'd be into Kaufman, or maybe not. I mean, you know, like I said, you're kind of your own pure raw thing. I mean, and he is his own pure raw thing. Um, but
It's
yeah,
always good to see more references. He's
hmm,
definitely on my list to go on a
yeah,
binge when I have a chance.
it's
But
definitely a
there's also
list.
like just a kind of a person that's really into puppets
Hmm,
that you would encounter from
yeah,
time to time if you're a puppeteer.
yeah. When you do your is it Richard P. Van
Dick,
Dyke? Dick Van
yeah,
Dyke? Yeah.
Richard P. Dick Van Johnson.
Johnson, that's
I
right.
like your interpretation.
Yeah. Richard P. Yeah, Johnson. Okay, so I think the first time I met you ever, you were in this Dick Johnson drag king kind of outfit and persona. And yeah, like when you're doing drag I mean, would you call that drag or would you call that more clowning?
I mean,
Or
it's both, but
it's
I
a
call
mesh
it
of
drag
both?
because
Yeah,
drag is something that people understand and
right,
it fits.
right. And there are very few drag kings, so it's like, okay, like there's more appreciation for it, I think.
When you
Um,
say you're a clown,
mhm.
people,
They freak out, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, because they have to deal with some, yeah,
people don't like that.
uncanniness. It's interesting, huh? Like all these things, like puppets, um, yeah, puppets and clowning. It's like it. I don't know. People have these fearful associations with them, you know, like carnies. It's like they're all kind of around this stigmatized kind of crowds. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for good reason, but when people come to my shows, they usually enjoy it and I usually get positive feedback, but it's certainly not good for marketing to
Mm.
put on your flyer. Clown show with puppets. It's much better to say drag show with comedy. Um,
Right. Right.
it's more friendly.
Yeah. And then it sneaks up on you. Yeah. Well, which is strange because I saw you do a show. I think it was in Copenhagen, right? You did a kids show.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's normally I do, not normally, I do kids shows sometimes, but
Hmm.
kids are definitely more amenable to puppets and clowns. They haven't learned to hate them yet. It's
Yeah.
more the adults I'll worry about. But somehow, through a weird twist,
Yeah.
I got invited to perform as Richard P. Dick Van Johnson just on the side during that Copenhagen trip at the Royal at the Royal Danish Playhouse, which
Yeah.
is like the opera house of Denmark.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
It was
Yeah.
very funny.
No, I love this character first of all because of the name, and um, yeah, like when you're in that character mode, when you're performing drag, like is there some element that it like a through line with doing puppets, doing like performing clowning and performing drag? Like, is there a through line? Are you kind of still doing similar things or the same thing, or like what are the
Yes.
differentiations? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing exactly the same thing. So
Hmm.
Richard could have been a puppet, maybe,
Hmm.
but then yeah, then I would be limited to maybe just being able to move one arm or yeah, just being able to move my mouth and not my eyes. And
Yeah.
for what I wanted to do with the Richard character,
Hmm.
I felt like yeah, I need all my body parts and need to be really flexible and very real.
Yeah.
But it's more or less the same thing, like my same stupid sense of humor and
Uh-huh.
a healthy touch of absurdism, and I would see it as very much the same thing, but just with slightly different mediums.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, I talked about like the practicalities of puppetry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, clowning, comedy, all of these art forms are just mediums,
Mm-hmm.
and you choose the one that you're good at, that fits what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I see them more or less as the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I like that answer because I think anybody who pursues like a creative mode, they're oftentimes pursuing multiple other modes at the same time, like in sync, and they all feed upon one another. Like for instance, even your Richard P. Johnson character is like, you also use this, gynecological clamp thing. It's like you have this gender kind of discussion or discourse in the backdrop there, like it's inserted in there, this potentially feminist ideology is inserted in there. And yeah, like I think whatever message that we have, however nebulous it is still some kind of a message, is some kind of expression, some kind of ideology that we are communicating outwardly. And as creative individuals, we pursue multiple things at once because it's like it takes more than one mode of expression to communicate whatever idea we have fully, right? And it comes out in different times because we're one body. We can only do so many things at one time. And in different, like you said, like a different medium each time. But like the one consistency is that that message is kind of the same. That one um, expressor, that one voice is consistently the same. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can also be unconscious, or maybe subconscious is a better way of putting it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, yeah, I mean, performance is an extension of yourself almost always to some extent. So it might be things I'm thinking about, or my values or my background that's coming out in my work that I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily deliberately putting out there.
Mm-hmm.
For example, also this dog act that I do,
Mm-hmm.
um, with a dog drawn on the back of me, and that I
Mm-hmm.
can't find it because it's
Mm-hmm.
behind me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the essence of the idea was just this stupid idea of like when you're looking for your glasses, but the glasses are on your head, so you're looking for the glasses, you can't find them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then
Mm.
people still read this piece as feminist,
Hmm.
which was not necessarily my intention. But
Mm-hmm.
when I ask people to explain that, it does make sense, and I can see that these themes do return if they're bubbling away in your
Right.
subconscious.
Right. And because you're a female body, you
Exactly. So to some extent, yeah, if
yeah.
I'm showing my body in a
Yeah.
non-sexual, what I would consider a non-sexual
Mm-hmm.
way,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's just a context that makes that mean something,
Mm-hmm.
and that might end up being feminist. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah. I think that's why I was kind of like, yeah, like a potentially feminist message because even with Richard P. Johnson, it's like, okay, like you're you're more poking fun at like not even poking fun. Excuse me. You're kind of exploring masculinity in like a ridiculous way, um, to say that, I mean, this is something like maybe Judith Butler talks about is like any gender is a construct and ultimately a performance, based on certain social constructs, social conventions, and whatnot, right? Doesn't have to necessarily be feminist per se. It may be feminist adjacent, or it's again feminism is part of the gender discourse, overall. Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, because I do this Richard character so much and I improvise a little and I write a little, sometimes I'm just enjoying being a man and doing
Mm-hmm.
man stuff. I'm actually just doing what feels natural when I'm in
Mm-hmm.
this character, and just enjoying having that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it will still be read as a bit feminist or a bit of a
Mm-hmm.
critique,
Mm-hmm.
because of the context that they see that I'm doing it as a character. But
Mm.
I'm really enjoying it sometimes.
Yeah, of
And
course,
then I'm like, oh, that's why they do that. because
Yeah.
it's quite fun to, or you feel quite powerful when you do that, or it
Yes.
gives me a little insight, honestly.
Yes. Yes. You're feeling it, and you find pleasure in it. It's like, then why else would we do it, right? If we are not finding pleasure in the thing that we're conducting, then it's just an abusive relationship with our act, with our artwork, and
Mm.
it just makes no sense. Yeah. And yeah, like when we watch drag shows, like they're having a ball up there. Everybody's having a ball, right? Yeah. It's supposed to be
And
fun.
to even also have some empathy,
Mm,
perhaps, for why things that might be slightly misogynistic happen, because you
right.
just did it yourself intuitively.
Right.
That's quite interesting. For example, I had a small consent issue
Mm,
where I was in this Richard character demonstrating how strong I was. And
mm,
then I chose the biggest guy from the audience, and he
mm-hmm.
told me he weighed 120 kilograms.
Wow.
And I got him to come onto the stage, and
Yeah.
then I picked him up and
Wow.
carried him around.
Oh my gosh.
And he was surprised, obviously. And then afterwards, someone said, "Oh, he looked really surprised. Did you ask him for permission to pick him up?" And I said, "Well, no, but I didn't. When I'm in that character, I didn't feel like I had to.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Not not ideal, but it gave me an insight into having, yeah, a different upbringing that might lead you to see things as not a problem when it
Uh-huh.
could be for
Yeah.
the time.
I mean, I think maybe everybody learned something in that moment, right?
Yeah,
It's not just Richard, it's not just you, it's literally everybody learned something in that moment. Because men don't ask. Come on. That's the bottom line. Again, I feel like maybe that audience member asked you that because you are a woman doing
yeah,
this, you
yeah.
know?
I mean, it wasn't it wasn't the guy I picked up that complained about it, of
Right.
course.
It was
But
another person.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. How interesting. And I just feel like that kind of goes back to this conversation again about, the artist's voice and the artist's message. A lot of the times, most of the time, artists don't want to pick a political side, you know? Like that's not necessarily their interest. Like the artist just wants to express, create and play, right? And the political stuff comes from the reception, like this
mm,
audience member, for instance, and then it gets molded into something via reviews, via audience reaction, via Twitter, via whatever, and then it gets sucked into this political discourse when the artists themselves are not necessarily trying to politicize at all. They're literally just trying to play, right? And in
yes,
that world, that nebulous world, wherein the potential of these ideologies are there, where the artist is not necessarily, attached to any single one, right? That exploration is where the weird stuff happens and the stuff that the political discourse is incapable of, right? Having that dialogue, they're incapable of having that. The artist is able to have that dialogue, right?
yeah. And I'm okay with this as well,
Yeah.
because I don't think the artist gets to be the boss of their work, especially if you're a performing artist. It's a two-way street. So you
Mm,
do half the work and then the audience does the other half. So I
mm,
can't tell them that they're wrong because I didn't
right,
plan on that.
right.
um,
Yeah.
their interpretations are valid. And,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, yeah, people get criticized that their work is transphobic or
Mm-hmm.
racist or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, oh, well, I didn't intend that.
Mm,
May well be true.
right.
But there's a lot of subconscious stuff going on that we also are not aware of.
Yes.
And if most people are interpreting it that way,
Mm,
their interpretation is valid. So
mm.
they're doing 50% of the act of creation
Yeah.
in receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's okay. We
Yeah.
have to be aware of both sides.
Mm-hmm. I like this idea of the audience being a co-creator with the performer in a performance art space. I mean, that's like a really novel idea actually for me. That's amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
this is it's something I noticed a lot from comedy actually,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe it's different if you're a painter. You can just paint and then your painting's done, and you don't have to show anyone if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed from being a member of the comedy scene in Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
people are really, the performers, I mean, are really paying attention to the audience response.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, that joke that I did yesterday didn't land today. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
laughed. Or
Mm-hmm.
this one got a bigger laugh than it did last week. And actually, so comedians are hyper aware of how the
Mm-hmm.
audience is receiving it, down to the nuances, to the pauses, to how strongly I delivered this joke, to whether I put it in the beginning or the end. They're very in tune.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really interesting because maybe traditional theater performers, for example, don't have as much flexibility in their performance as
Mm-hmm.
a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can't afford to worry about, if the joke was at the beginning or the end because they've got a set script or whatever.
Right.
So I think that was a nice learning for me, actually.
Yeah. The stand-ups are control freaks, like fucking control freaks. And it is, I would say, the scariest thing to do is stand-up comedy. I have a lot of friends who do stand-up, but they started out with improv and sketch, which has a team. And so they always say this. They're like, whenever I do stand-up, I'm so afraid. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? You've been doing improv for 15 years, And they're like, yeah, but I have a team. I have a fallback. I have support. Like stand up, I'm all by myself. I'm like, oh, okay. Like I don't have any experience with improv or sketch, so I don't have that understanding of the team and the fallback and the safety net. I don't have any of that shit. It was just stand up, right? So for me, it's like that fear, quote unquote, or that adrenaline is the baseline. That's the default. So like I don't have any other place in my memory to fall back and be like, oh, it was nice back then. That's just how it is. And it's just interesting to me how these improv comics who've been doing it for an eternity, who are really good at it, some who've been doing it for like 2-3 decades, have taught huge stars in Hollywood and shit, they still say stand up makes me feel like day one of performing because it's so scary. And I was like, oh, that's so fucking interesting, like considering
I
all the
think
achievements and experiences.
mm, the other reason maybe why stand up is so scary is because the audience is there, or everybody's there with the expectation that they should laugh.
Yeah.
So, first of all, that's incredibly subjective and really difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of experience
Yeah.
and intuition.
Yeah.
Secondly, they're really there with the expectation that they should laugh. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing else. At
Mm-hmm.
least when you go to an improv show, you think, oh, that was so clever, or
Mm.
we're having fun, or that was kind of interesting, or
Mm-hmm.
me as an audience member, I got to, choose the setting or the theme or something.
Yeah.
In the comedy show, everybody's sitting in their chairs, they're looking at you, and you need to say something that makes them laugh.
Yeah.
And that's it. You don't think, oh, this burlesque routine was kind of boring, but they had a beautiful costume and the song was great, or
Yeah.
that clown act, I don't know, maybe I didn't understand it, but it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like the stand-up's got nothing else.
Nothing else. Nothing but
They just
them.
got this
Mm-hmm.
tough goal,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only goal.
Yeah. When I listen to comedy albums, like especially with, contemporary comics that I admire and I look up to, and I'm listening to it, I could hear like the fluctuation, the decibel of the laughter. And sometimes like I'll hear very low, like small laughter, like a little trickle, not big. And then I could kind of hear the comic, feeling that out too. Sometimes the comic is completely shocked because usually by that point, by the time they have an album out, they've done those jokes hundreds of times, if not thousands of times. They've done it for like minimum, excuse me, minimum 5 years. They've done it. It's meaning they've done it hundreds of times, hundreds of audiences, thousands, if not thousands, right? So they know that it always works. Those are the ones that end up in the album. And when it doesn't get a laugh on the day of their album recording, like you could kind of feel the comic. I probably feel it more because I am a comic as well. But like, yeah, and for that reason, what you say is true. Like it is terrifying because comedy is very, very, very subjective. Not only a person's taste and their background, but it's like literally that day, that
Mm-hmm.
room, that moment, right? All of it is different. The temperature of the room, rainy day in Berlin, fucking forget it. You're gonna bomb that day. You're gonna have a shitty set. They're not gonna laugh. They're so miserable. You have the best jokes that worked everywhere. It's not gonna work that day in a room in Berlin. I know this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
Or
it's
Tuesday versus Friday.
yeah, yeah. It's
Simple
like
as that.
all of it is just so like it's so fragile, you know, but and yet so beautiful when it works, right? When it works in spite of all those things and it fucking works. That's when it's like, oh my, it's like stand up so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and beautiful and magical. And
Mhm.
that's why people like it, but it's difficult. It's
Mhm.
incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think audiences also are scared a bit.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it's again, if you see a boring burlesque routine or something, you know, it's fine. Like it doesn't hurt you.
Right.
But when an audience member goes to see a comedian that's bombing, like it
Yeah.
hurts them too.
Yeah.
They,
Everybody's
you know,
injured.
you can feel how uncomfortable the audience are. They want to
Yeah.
laugh, but they
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do about it.
They're just
How,
sitting there hoping that it'll end.
how can I help? And they can't talk. If they do, they're gonna get yelled at. It's like it's such an impossible situation. Everybody becomes a child in that moment. Everybody becomes a helpless child in that moment. But
Yeah.
again, the only person who's able to steer that ship out of the turf that they landed on is the comic. They have to release that tension. They must.
And when it works, it's magic. It's
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
It is fucking beautiful. Well, let me ask you one last thing about performance then. Like, have you ever acted on screen? Or just done like, I don't know, something more conventional like Shakespeare or some kind of play on like theater wise? And was that in any way like drastically different for you compared to having these other objects where you could express yourself?
Yeah. Um, I don't do much conventional stuff, but I have had things in the past that I've had to do
Mm,
or wanted to do.
mm-hmm,
But the most recent example actually was this children's theater performance in Copenhagen last week because it's fresh in my mind.
mm-hmm.
I was very freaked out. It was basically a concept that they do there quite often called de kalte Börde or something. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce Danish word,
Yeah.
but it means the cold table, which
Mm,
is in Denmark, they love eating buffets for
yeah.
some reason. It's not
Mm,
very corona friendly, but it didn't stop them. There's still a lot of buffets.
uh-huh.
And that's what the program is called. They'd make speed plays. So we got randomly matched up with a director, a writer, and three performers and a location.
Yeah.
Then the writer had 2 days to write the play. We had 2 days to be directed and create the play, and then we
Yeah.
performed for 2 days,
Mm,
which I thought would be a piece of cake
mm-hmm,
because I'm fairly comfortable with children's theatre.
mm-hmm.
But then in the end, the script that we got delivered, to cut a long story short, was about 14 pages of text,
Wow.
heavy, heavy, heavy text
Mm-hmm.
based play. And because I was the puppeteer, I played four different characters
Mm.
and I was on stage almost the entire time,
Wow.
which I'm not very experienced with learning a lot of lines.
Mm-hmm.
And when we came into the rehearsal room, the director said, "Okay, I've thought about how I'm going to structure today. I think we'll split the play up into three parts and
Mm-hmm.
work on each part one at a time."
Mm-hmm.
And first up, I'm just going to give you 1 hour to memorize the first third, and then we'll spend an hour working on it.
Wow.
How's everyone feeling about that? And I said, I have no experience doing this.
Right.
And he was fantastic. He's a Yale trained performer from the States, but he runs an acting studio in Serbia.
Mm.
And he said, well, I will teach you some memorization techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught me some very specific techniques. And somehow I managed to memorize the entire thing in a day as planned.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, that was actually a super good and interesting experience for me. Mostly working with devised theatre. It was nice to have a script, relaxing almost. Like, despite my original freak out, it's nice to know that you have a team, actually, like you said. So you don't have to come up with brilliant things to say. There is a team member who specializes in that. You also don't have to, come up with every movement and motivation and relationship yourself, because there's a director and that team member is specializing in that. And that was really useful for him to say, oh, when you came in the door, where did you come from? Oh, I came from the street. Maybe I live 20-minute walk away. He's like, well, maybe come in with sunglasses on and take them off and take off your shoes, or whatever you would do when you come into the room. Obvious stuff, but it's nice that to have an extra person there who's just focusing on that when you've got so many other things to do. So that maybe is obvious, but that was a different kind of experience for me. That was more traditional, and actually I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Thanks. Okay, we're going to wrap with some flashcard questions. You ready?
Oh, they're not German vocabulary, I hope.
9. Okay, so let's say the show I'm going to base these flashcard questions on is called Record of Youth. It's on Netflix at the moment. I think it came out last year. Stars Park Bo-gum and Park So-dam. Park So-dam, everybody knows. She was in Parasite. She played the daughter who does that little song at the doorbell. Yeah. Okay, so let's say you're a 25-year-old male model and actor named Hejun. Okay, you've been in this industry for years, something like 7-8 years, but your career has not taken off to the point of financial success. Meanwhile, your managing agent is withholding checks from you and not paying what you're owed, and he's criticizing you, telling you that you suck. That's why the managing agency is going down to shit. What do you do?
Desperately try and land the next big thing through a sexual encounter with the casting director.
We'll do anything for survival, yes. Okay, good. Very good. I like that answer. All right. Okay, good. Let's say you're a 25-year-old makeup artist. You're an assistant working at this high-end salon, right? You used to be a white-collar 9-to-5 office worker, but you left that job to pursue your dream career as a makeup artist. Okay, so like after work, you do your own like YouTube thing with like on the street with strangers, and you film it and then you upload it, and you're trying to build a following, blah blah blah. And you're a huge fan. Your name is An Jung-ah, and you're a huge fan of this Hijun guy, this model that I just talked about. Okay, and one day you're at your job, you're working, and he sits down in your chair and asks you to do his makeup. But you're just an assistant and you're not supposed to be doing any client's makeup because your supervisor, the head makeup artist, will take huge offense and make a big stink about it, right? But he insists that you do his makeup. So you start, and then your boss shows up and she reprimands you in front of this model / actor that you've been a fan of for years. What do you do?
While he's turned around, take like a little bit of his hair and put it in my pocket, and then try and save face in the situation, but I'll have the hair later to make a spell.
Okay. Yes, very good. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so you're Hijin again, the model. There's a famous older gay fashion designer in the scene who has a huge crush on you, and he propositioned you to, he said, "I'll be your sponsor in exchange for you to sleep with me," and you turned him down, right? You turned him down years ago. He does it again, and you say no, and he tells you that the reason why your career sucks is because you're not willing to play the game. What do you do?
Oh, lucky I already decided to sleep with the casting director earlier on. Maybe this is a conversation that leads me to do that. Um, I guess I would, yeah, probably stick with turning him down, but maybe something shifted in my mind and I
Hmm.
realized that he was right. And I take that attitude to the next encounter or the next career related decision I have to make.
Hmm. Okay. So you would go with this offer then once you change your mind.
Yeah, I mean, if yeah, my background is that I've been trying for 7 or 8 years with no success through everything
Uh,
that I've already tried, I guess I would feel like I had to try something else.
mm, good. That's a good point. Honestly, yeah. Okay. Let's say you're a model slash actor. You're a different one. Okay. Your name is One Heyu. All right. You have a lot of Instagram followers, like hundreds of thousands, and you have a few commercial gigs under your belt already. Your face is recognizable. It's been all over the posters and the screens and all that shit. Your best friend is Hijun, the previous model we've been talking about. And Hijun's mother works at your house as a housekeeper. Okay? So that's the class difference. You're from a rich family, Hijun's from a poor family. Okay. One day you realize that the reason why you're so successful in your acting career, in your modeling career, is because your very rich mother has been bribing industry professionals to give you acting gigs by giving them gifts like hair bags and like tickets and all this shit. And she's been buying you fake followers on social media. What do you do?
Oh, ask mum to throw my mate a bone, buy a few things for him too.
Okay. So this wouldn't bother you at all that your mother has been doing this.
You got to play the game, like
Oh,
the
wow.
the costume guy said.
The answers are so easy, you know? I don't know why these actors and these characters went through all this hell and turmoil in the show. Like, why was there so much resistance? It's like, yeah, yeah, you do this for me, do it for my buddy too. Yeah. Okay, great. Awesome. Yeah. The people who have must give to the have nots. Yes. All right.
I think that's nice.
Yeah, it's a nice
Okay.
thing to do. Buy him some fake followers. He only has like 20,000, you know? Yeah.
Bribe the next casting director
Yeah.
for him.
Give him a Prada bag so that he would cast him. Yeah. And then we could be on set together. It'd be awesome. Okay, great.
Yeah, he's my buddy.
Okay. All right. So you're a Hijin again, and your father and older brother keep telling you how you're wasting your time with impractical dreams. Your father is especially mad at you because his father used to be a singer who never made it, but instead dragged his son and his wife, the whole family, into a lifetime of debt with his poor choices. What do you do?
It's too real. Um,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, I think. Oh, look, all these things are conspiring together to make this my poor character here more cutthroat.
Yeah,
I'm going to prove you wrong, Dad. I'm going to do what it takes. You'll see.
yeah.
Maybe a deadline.
Hmm.
By this time next year, things will
Yeah.
be different.
Okay, yeah. Because you would have blown several casting directors at that point and gotten
Yeah,
your way.
and that speeds things up too.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, it's sad that it's true, but sometimes it works. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let's say you're a guy. Excuse me. You're a guy in your mid-20s. Your name is Chinu. All right. You're neither of these model guys. You're just a working class dude. Your girlfriend is a very wealthy lady. Okay. And you've been dating for a couple months now, but you still have not had sex yet. Okay. And you tell her, You want to bring this relationship to the next level, make it physical. And she tells you that she wants the same, but that you need to get your HPV shots first. What do you do?
Go get the shots. This one is a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's actually a stupid question, actually. Yeah. For most men, I don't know. Maybe Richard might feel differently. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure about that. I
Yeah.
mean, I understand there's like a whole movement of anti-vaxxers, but that was never about HPV shots.
Right. That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
That was
Why?
about like we don't like being locked in the house and told what to do and told what to wear. And
Right.
I think the
Oh,
anxiety comes
wow.
from a different place.
I'm having such a
Um,
eureka moment right now after you just said that.
there aren't two sides to STDs. Like nobody likes them.
No, no, no. As soon as you said the anti-vaxxers didn't like being told what to do, being locked inside the house and told what not to wear, and I'm like, that's been every woman
Yeah.
since the beginning of time. And it's like the whole world had to become a woman, and
Yep.
they were mad.
It turns out it doesn't feel that nice to have less rights than you did before.
Yeah. Okay. Great, great. I love this. Okay, okay. Final question. All right. So you're Hijin now. All right. After 8 years, you make your big break as an actor. You're
Yes,
all
I knew
over
it.
TV. All over TV. You're all in all the movies. You are in all the magazine covers. You're winning awards, all the accolades. Meanwhile, your ability to spend time with your girlfriend has diminished greatly. Okay. You're not even able to go public about your relationship because of privacy issues. You know, you want to respect her boundaries, your boundaries, whatnot. But there is a rumor going around the industry that the news is picking up that you used to date that gay fashion designer who used to proposition you. Okay. And one day, right after your award ceremony, this gay fashion designer commits suicide. And the last person he texted was you. What do you do?
Well, I know that I didn't have a relationship with him,
Mm.
so I'm not feeling particularly responsible for this.
Mm.
So I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to keep living my life.
Mm. Interesting. Very good. That's it, man.
Oh, that
Yeah.
was fun.
It was nice talking to you.
Yeah,
Huh?
I'll have to check out this film to
Yeah.
see what really goes down.